So Andrew Wheeler is a coal lobbyist, and Trump wants him as the next head of the EPA. On the fact that he's a coal lobbyist alone, disqualified. I'm not interested in you being in this position. Anybody with a brain should agree on that front. Well, Bernie took him to school on the issue of climate change. Take a look.
President Trump has indicated his belief that climate change is a hoax, perhaps perpetrated by the Chinese. Do you agree?
Well, I believe that climate change is real. I believe that man has an impact on it. And
the President has said that climate change is a hoax. Do you agree with him?
I've not used the hoax word myself.
I see. Leading scientists around the world, looking at many, many hundreds of reports, have indicated that we have 12 years in order to stop the worst impacts of climate change. And what they are talking about are rising sea levels, more drought, more extreme weather disturbances, more wildfires, more migrations of people. Do you agree with the scientific community that climate change is a global crisis that must be addressed in an aggressive way?
I believe that climate change is a global issue that must be addressed globally. No one country can...
That wasn't my question, sir. I don't have a lot of time, and I'd appreciate if you're answering the questions. Scientific community has said that climate change is one of the great crises facing our planet. And if there is not unprecedented action to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to sustainable energy and energy efficiency, there will be irreparable damage in the United States and in virtually every country on Earth. Do you agree with the scientific community?
I would not call it the greatest crisis, no, sir. I consider it a huge issue that has to be addressed globally.
Well, what you are, I found it interesting, Mr. Wheeler. You are the nominee to be head of the Environmental Protection Agency. You just, in your opening statement, did not mention the word climate change. Now, how does it happen that the nominee to be head of the Environmental Protection Agency does not mention the words climate change at a time when the scientific community thinks that climate change is the great environmental crisis facing this planet? Should the American people have confidence that you're going to help us deal with this global crisis?
Yes, they should have confidence because we are moving forward to reduce CO2. Our ACE proposal will reduce CO2 approximately the same levels that the Clean Power Plan would have if it had been implemented. And we're reducing CO2 from our CAFE standards, and we're also addressing greenhouse gases through our methane program as well.
You're addressing.
Yes.
But the scientific community tells us that we have a crisis and that we need unprecedented action to dramatically reduce carbon emissions, not only in this country, but around the world. Now, we are the strongest economy in the world. And if the leadership of the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States says to China and to Russia and to India and to countries all over the world that we have got to move aggressively to protect this planet for our children and our grandchildren, we can have some impact on the entire international community. Are you prepared to do that?
We are implementing the laws that Congress has passed.
Are the wildfires that we have seen in California and elsewhere, are those related to climate change in your judgment?
There's probably some relation to climate change. I think the biggest issue with the wildfires has been forest management.
That's the biggest issue, not the droughts that we are seeing.
That is the biggest issue.
You know, I have to say, oftentimes we talk about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and we describe how they're both massively corrupt and they're both bought by Wall Street and Big Pharma and for-profit health insurance companies and the military-industrial complex. And a distinction that I often make is some of the special interest Democratic donors are not as scary as the Republican ones and not as bad as the Republican ones. So, for example, lawyers. Lawyers are overwhelmingly Democratic donors, and teachers and unions, those are special interests that are much more benign than, many of the Republican donors, like Big Oil, that are kind of specific to Republicans, and the NRA, the gun lobby, specific to Republicans. And we stand by that. Both parties are corrupt, and we need massive change But there's another point that needs to be made, which I think is really vital, which oftentimes we leave out, and that's my mistake for doing so, but now we're going to make it. When it comes to executive agencies, there is zero comparison between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Because the whole point of the Republican Party and a Republican president and who they pick for respective agencies, the whole point is to undermine those executive agencies. So take, for example, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Democrats put in charge somebody of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau who's in favor of having the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau do consumer protection. On the flip side, Republicans, predatory payday loan guy, they want as the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So in other words, a guy who has no interest in regulating to make sure that financial institutions treat people fairly, he's the guy who's the head of the agency which regulates financial institutions to make sure you're treated fairly. That's insane. That's insane. The EPA is just another great example of it, and that's what you're seeing here. The guy who Trump wants as the head of the EPA is a fucking coal lobbyist. He's not going to regulate dick. That's the whole point. He doesn't care. He wants to handcuff the agency. Health and Human Services. So the guy that Trump wants as the head of Health and Human Services to help lower drug prices is Alex Azar, who was an executive at Eli Lilly, a big pharma company, and he jacked up drug prices. He price gouged. So there is, listen, in many ways, there is an equivalence between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. When it comes specifically to the issue of executive agencies, there's no comparison. The Democrats are just leagues better, eons better. When it comes to the Supreme Court, that's another one. Even if the Democrats pick shitty centrist justices are way better than far right-wing justices, like a Clarence Thomas, like a Neil Gorsuch. So these major differences, and this is just such a great example of exactly that. You see how out of touch with the scientific reality Andrew Wheeler is. You see how out of touch he would be with the job of being the head of the EPA, and Bernie just exposed his punk ass.